from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in just one day. I'll show you the newest forecast of Milton and the impacts in Florida and here in North Carolina.
And mandatory evacuations creating scenes like this in Florida. We're live at RDU speaking with travelers seeking refuge in the Triangle. Then at least 4 people dead, 4 still missing in one North Carolina community.
And it still hurts. Hurts very deep.
The emotional toll the storm is taking on survivors. Another hurricane has formed in the Gulf of Mexico, and it is a strong one. Hurricane Milton, a Category 5, and it's taking aim at Central Florida. Thank you for joining us at 7 o'clock tonight. I'm Ashley Rowe.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. So this storm likely won't impact North Carolina much, if at all. But another disaster could be on our hands. That means more resources, more money, more people in danger who are going to need help. Meteorologist Mike Mays has been tracking this for several days now. Mike, Milton could make landfall by Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday night is what we're watching for around the Tampa area. Could be anywhere from Tampa to Sarasota, maybe a little farther north. But there is the storm right now. Much different storm than Helene, a very compact storm. Hurricane force winds extend 30 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds only 80 miles from the center, whereas Helene 345 miles from the center. So that was much more of a broad storm. Top winds are at 180. It is moving to the east right now at 10 miles per hour. This is the 5 o'clock advisory, the track and intensities. Later on tonight, it's anticipated to get to 185 miles per hour. But I noticed the satellite picture, the last couple of loops, frames, I should say, the central the eye looks like it is filling in just a little bit, which means maybe some loss of intensity. By 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, 175 mile per hour winds at landfall, 2 a.m., maybe winds down to 125. Don't count on that because some of the intensity models actually have it as a Category 4 storm at landfall and then making its way into the Atlantic. There are hurricane warnings on the West Coast, hurricane watches on the East Coast. Central Florida is going to get hit hard. I'll talk more about this rapid intensification going from a tropical storm yesterday to a major hurricane coming up in less than 15 minutes.
And you know this, Mike, whether it's a 3 or a 4, it really doesn't matter in the terms of what people have to be prepared for. It's going to be bad either way. And you can see what's happening in the state. Evacuations underway right now in Florida. This is a live look over Interstate 4 right near Tampa. All those cars headed out of town, headed north. At least 7 counties under a major evacuation, a mandatory evacuation order, I should say. The airports aren't much better. Tampa's airport closes tomorrow. Orlando's closes on Wednesday. Some folks did manage to jump on a flight before then. Many people landed at RDU this afternoon. WRAL's Julian Grace is there live. Julian, you heard from some folks getting out of the path of this storm.
We did, Dan, and let me tell you this, it has been a very busy day here at RDU, and just look at the big board for yourself. 8 flights from Florida are expected to land here. Out of those 8, 3 are delayed. Let's go to the turnstiles. We saw people show up today to get their packages and to get their suitcases so they can make sure they can get on their way. And we spoke with passengers from a flight arriving from Orlando, one of the first to touch down this evening. Some shared their experiences of heavy traffic as travelers attempted to leave Florida. Then there was one family finishing their trip to Disney. They described the mood at the amusement park as they were leaving.
There was a whole host of other people coming in to Disney, and they're just sitting around wondering what's going to happen.
Tonight at 10 and 11, you will hear from more of those passengers who landed from Orlando, some from Miami, and one from Tampa. Hear what he has to say. All new tonight at 10 and 11 on how he and his family navigated around the upcoming storm. For now, reporting live at RDU, Julian Grace, WRAL News.
Thank you, Julian. The response in the North Carolina mountains is only getting stronger. More troops on the way, more supplies, more money flowing into the region. Here are a few of the big updates tonight. We now know that the storm is responsible for at least 116 deaths in North Carolina alone. More than 50 water systems were damaged or destroyed. DOT is working to clear and reopen 500 roads. Troops from Fort Liberty are on the ground in western North Carolina. More are on the way. This is new video of their work so far in places like Marion in McDowell County and Fairview in Buncombe County. Another 500 active duty troops will join them. It's unclear when they will deploy. Today, Governor Cooper and FEMA officials gave an update. More than $31 million have been distributed to more than 104,000 people who registered for assistance. $100 million in federal dollars will go to fix roads. WRAL's Eric Miller has been in some of the most remote and rural parts of the mountains. Eric, people there now facing more than a week without any water, without any power. And now a lot of these rescue missions are turning to recovery missions.
Yeah, Ashley, it's really taking a toll on people, both first responders and residents here in places like Curtis Creek. One woman telling me today that she is so tired, so exhausted, she literally fell into a stranger's arms and broke down crying. And you look around at some of this damage here in Avery County, this formerly green paradise turned into a moonscape. You can see why. In Curtis Creek, it's the start of a new week.
I mean, it's been rough.
But the same old problems have been sticking around.
Some people can't get to their homes because of trees being down and it's blown over.
No power except by generator, no water except from the spring. Donations and the kindness of strangers keeping this community and residents like Wade Hicks going.
But I want to thank everybody that's contributed in any form or fashion to help this community. Thank them very much.
Help has come from as far as West Virginia, including these cards posted on the church doors ahead of the first Sunday service this church hosted since the storm.
It wasn't a long service, but we was able to get together and have service. Thank God for that.
And as this community has prayed, first responders have been powering through.
Yeah, we've been working 16-hour days some days, and that's just part of one of these things, you know.
Avery County Sheriff Mike Henley saying there are now 4 people dead in his county and 4 missing. Rescue operations also switching into recovery mode with a mobile morgue standing by.
That is in place. We need it.
Now, Sheriff Henley did give us a tour of their command post there, local as well as national officials there standing by, including leaders from FEMA, trying to figure out how to best help this community. Ashley?
Eric, real quick, are you getting any sense of progress on power restoration in this community?
Well, Ashley, power is back on for most folks here in Avery County, but for others, we're told it could be up to 2 months. Here in Curtis Creek, we saw line crews literally lining this entire street today. My photographer, Luke, commented it's more than he has ever seen in one single place, and still with that effort being made, that 2-month figure just letting you know how damaged the infrastructure here really is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Eric Miller, thank you.
Today marks 1 year since Hamas militants killed 1,200 people, igniting a war. Since then, tens of thousands of civilian lives have been lost to violence in Israel and Gaza. This was the National Mall in Washington, D.C. today. Groups stood in solidarity with Israel, the hostages, and the people killed 1 year ago. Over at the White House, the president and first lady marked the anniversary with a candle lighting ceremony. We also heard from family members of hostages as their loved ones remain in custody.
For us, this whole thing just began on October 7th. The last time I spoke to Omer was October 6th, and everything seemed fine. And I haven't heard his voice since. I don't know if he's alive. I pray and hope every single day that he's still alive. But for us, it's been a prolonged terrorist attack.
One of the hostages still in custody tonight is a man from Chapel Hill, Keith Siegel. Here at 7 o'clock, we had the chance to talk to his wife, Aviva. She was hostage herself until she was released last November. She told us their family is desperate to bring Keith home.
I just want to tell everybody that Keith's mom is 97 years old, and he's waiting to come home and give her a hug, and she's waiting for him. And I pray every day that Keith will come home and he'll be able to come home to North Carolina to hug his mom.
Around 100 hostages are believed to still be in Hamas custody. Since the massacre on October 7th, the Hamas Health Ministry reports more than 41,000 people have been killed.
Let's get you caught up on some of the other news of the day. Here are 5 things you should know right now. Today, a candidate for state senate in Wake County has been reinstated to his assistant principal job. Scott Lassiter was suspended with pay after a fight between two students. Lassiter was involved in breaking it up. The school system disputed some of what the attorney says happened. Lassiter is a Republican running against Democratic State Senator Lisa Grafstein. A gas leak closed a portion of Six Forks Road in Raleigh. This all started before 2 p.m. between Morning Dove Road and Monument Lane. Officials secured the leak a little over an hour later. They put detours in place before reopening the road. Today was the first day of a new legal battle over insurance rates in North Carolina. Insurance companies want to hike rates by an average of 42%. State regulators aren't convinced. They call the request disingenuous. The process is expected to last several weeks. We likely won't see a decision on homeowners' insurance rates until after the election. Bridge construction in Durham will close sections of Alston and Anger Avenues starting tonight at 9 o'clock. DOT crews will install bridge girders at the Norfolk Southern Railway and Pettigrew Street bridges. They'll do all the work overnight for the next 3 weeks. The roads close at 9 o'clock and then they reopen at 6 a.m. Detours are in place. And right now, Granville County school leaders are meeting to discuss plans to consolidate two schools. The plan is to close Granville Central High and reassign students to South Granville and JF Webb. The district could also close Butner Stern Middle School. A final decision could be made in November.
Let's go in depth for a moment on this Monday. Many of you had some questions about the storm, the response in western North Carolina, and we're working on getting you some answers tonight. So let's talk about two things, voting and also those donations and where all the money goes. Then we want you to meet some of the people who were among the first to know about the devastation in the mountains, the people who picked up those phone calls for 911 call centers. Welcome back. We asked for your questions and we got a lot of emails, so thank you. The inbox full of questions about the Helene relief response. Thank you to everybody who is sending this stuff in. We always love doing this segment, but it doesn't happen without you. If you didn't get a chance to send in questions the first time around, not too late. Send those emails to dan@WRAL.com. If there's something you want to know about when it comes to the storm response or any news story at all, tell me your thoughts and we'll go in depth. Tonight, we want to tackle two of the questions that we got over the last couple of days. Judy asks, for those who lost everything in the floodwaters, will they be able to vote if they've lost their IDs? Judy, that's a really great question. The North Carolina State Board of Elections worked on this very thing today, and our NC Capitol team reported on it. The board voted unanimously to give the hardest hit counties more flexibility in how they conduct their elections. In fact, one of the board members is actually from Western North Carolina, so they know exactly what's going on. Here's what he said about the election concerns.
We will continue to make voting accessible to the voters. And whether we need four-wheelers, horses, or helicopters, this disaster highlights the need for consistency in our work and making sure that we get to the locations that the voters expect us to be.
Okay, so what did they decide? What's the plan? Here's a list. Local boards can relocate voting sites if buildings are damaged or can't be accessed. They can even set up tents if that's what they need to do. The board guarantees at least one voting site will be open in each county. And if mail service is interrupted in these areas, local boards can have special teams take absentee ballots to the voters at the disaster relief centers and the shelters there and then bring those ballots back. But what about Judy's specific question? What about voter ID? Well, the state actually didn't have to take any special action on this one. The voter ID law on the books allows exceptions for voters living under a federal disaster declaration. So voter ID will not be a problem for any of these folks. Linda had a question about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you at home raised, a lot of folks here, to help the neighbors in the mountains. She asked, what happens to the money that you're collecting? Who decides what it's used for? So again, so far you have raised a lot of money, nearly $900,000 in the WRAL Cares fundraiser. The money goes to the Red Cross, and the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund. But Linda raises some good points. Where does that money go once these groups get it? Well, for starters, the Red Cross is literally on the ground in western North Carolina right now. They're operating 20 shelters. They're providing 1,300 people with a safe place to stay. They also have 600 responders in North Carolina and South Carolina helping people there. The money pays for all of that stuff and the supplies that they need to make it all happen. As for the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund, the United Way handles this. They're more like money managers. They provide grants and reimbursements to nonprofits and other groups that are on the ground working in those affected communities. We asked for a list of groups that have received money so far. We're waiting to hear back on that, but we'll get you some information on it. Many of you also had some questions about all the discussions online, the misinformation swirling around when it comes to this disaster. What's true, what's not, what's kind of true, that sort of thing. These questions, of course, require a little more time to find answers, but we're working on it. The in-depth team is working on it for you, and we're going to talk about it a little later this week. In the meantime, there's the email address, dan@WRAL.com. What else are we talking about? What do you want to know about when it comes to Hurricane Helene, the recovery efforts in our state? Tell me, what is on your mind? And we'll go in depth.
Well, the next big storm, of course, that we are bracing for is Hurricane Milton. And what is striking to so many of us is just how quickly this storm intensified over a 24-hour period. But you're here to show us how Milton's not alone in this.
No, in fact, Milton's number 3 on the list. Wilma back in 2005 strengthened 125 miles per hour in wind speed in 24 hours. Then you had Felix in 2007, did it 100 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. And for Milton, it was 95 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. Now up to 180 mile per hour wind. So it happens. It seems like lately these days we have rapid intensification, but this year this has been the strongest intensification that we have seen, and we're not done with hurricane season. It ends November 30th. So here's how Milton intensified. 5 a.m. this morning, top winds are at 100. You get to 5 o'clock this afternoon, the winds up to 180 miles per hour, and the intensification may not stop there. Later on tonight, it could get up to 185 mile per hour winds, and it could weaken on approach. But don't count on that. It could still be a Category 5, and even some intensity models are up to a Category, could be a 4 or a 5. We'll watch to see how that all pans out. So hurricane warnings are in effect for the Tampa area, farther inland for Orlando, up to Ocala, farther south towards Sarasota. The reds are hurricane watches. That's Jacksonville, that's St. Augustine, that's Port Canaveral, that's Melbourne, farther south close to Fort Pierce. Then you have Lake Okeechobee. It looks like some of the interior sections as well. Miami's in a tropical storm watch, tropical storm warnings for the Keys, and where Helene made landfall on September 25th, they have tropical storm warnings. They're not, as of right now, going to get a direct impact, but we'll watch to see in the coming days how that changes. Storm surge went up in the 5 o'clock advisory. For the Tampa area, it's 10 to 15-foot storm surge. And if the storm is here, the strongest storm surge will be focused on Tampa Bay, and it could be the worst storm surge there in over a century. If it's a little farther south, they wouldn't bear the brunt. Areas to the south would. Ian decimated the Naples and Fort Myers area. Depending on where the storm tracks, there could be a lot of destruction across the west coast of Florida. Time will tell how this evolves. And the European model showing where the storm is expected to go, also picking up on something else. There's an area of disturbed weather that crossed Florida today that brought rain, and the model's spinning something up. In fact, the ensembles have it becoming a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm. But in the meantime, there's Milton heading toward Florida. For us, we'll have cloudy skies Wednesday night and Thursday. Winds will be negligible down east toward the coast, beach erosion, heavier surf, rougher surf is possible, maybe toward Oak Island, a little bit of rain, and that's about it. High pressure building and bringing the nice air that we're feeling right now will keep the storm to the south and not impact North Carolina, and then it will pass by and move into the Atlantic. Gorgeous sunset in progress. 72, the dew point has fallen to 54. 85 was the high today. And temperatures out there right now ranging from 63 at Roxborough, 72 in Raleigh, 78 in Fayetteville. 7-day forecast, cooler days are ahead. 85 today, mid-70s tomorrow and Wednesday with low humidity. 67 on Thursday with that overcast from Milton. 67 the high, it'll be a breezy, cool day. 70 on Friday. Over the weekend, we warm back up. Ahead of another cold front Sunday, we're in the mid-80s, but then we cool back down into the mid-70s. So this week is going to feel very good and excellent weather for cleanup out west.
Thank you, Mike.
One last thing for you tonight, some well-deserved recognition for the men and women who literally answered the call when Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina. That's in 2 minutes. briefing tonight, we have talked a lot about people heading to the North Carolina mountains to help, the troops, the National Guardsmen, the volunteers. One group we don't want to forget are the 911 operators.
What an important job. Buncombe County shared these photos. This is inside their Public Safety Communications Center, and these are the people who answer those phone calls when someone calls on what is many times the worst day of their life. They continue, though, to work around the clock, sleeping on floors in some situations, hearing stories from their neighbors who lost everything, comforting people. When their job takes a toll on them like this, it cannot be easy.
There were so many calls coming in. Operators in our area had to help out as well. This is video from inside the Operations Center in Fayetteville. They alone handled more than 1,100 calls. The city posted some of their stories on Facebook.
The one that stood out the most was one of the later calls that I took closer to the time that I left out, and it was a lady, and it was her family, 5 adults, and they were stuck in their house, and she said her house was starting to move and be moved by the water. So she was floating, not necessarily down the river, but the house was moving in the water.
How do you even possibly help people in that situation? It wasn't just Fayetteville helping out. Operation centers statewide helped in the effort.
They're really well trained.
Yeah.
But there's also that second part of just being a really good person
Yep.
and being able to help people through those times. So thank you to all of them. And thanks for being with us tonight. We'll see you back here at 10 o'clock on Fox 50 and 11 on WRAL.